Peace, family. Peace. I'm making this video today because I had a conversation again. You know, that's what normally inspires these little rants of mine. And I was speaking to somebody about God and the fact that we always have to speak to God's partner or God's associate or God's intermediary or God's secretary. God's never at work, it seems, when it comes to these Abrahamic religions, right? So what I've noticed is that, you know, the Bible would say none can get through the Father except through me, right? Now, I'm a person who, when I've got a discrepancy, I want to talk to the manager, right? I want to talk to the CEO. I want to talk to the head honcho. I want to talk to the head nigger in charge, okay? That's who I want to speak to. However, when it comes to these religions, they don't really want you to speak to the head guy. You have to always go through a secretary or an associate or somebody who represents them, right? So in the Christian narrative, you've got to go to Jesus to what? To get to the head honcho, to, you know, speak to him, to understand who he is. You got to go through Jesus. You go to the Islamic narrative and there's a guy called Muhammad. And apparently God chose this guy to give everyone his last words, right? And so if you want to know what God said, right, you got to go to Muhammad. And so for me, it's just like, well, why have I always got to go to the secretary? Why have I always got to go to the associate? Why have I always got to go to the partner? Why can't I go to the source directly? What is wrong with you going to the source directly? Why does God apparently not want to be contacted? Why does he always send his partners or his associates? And to me, that is very suspect. To me, because people tell me that God is, you know, God's everywhere, or, you know, God is unlimited, people say, you know, but God apparently now limits himself to this partner. You can't contact him, you know, he's out to lunch. You know, I'm like, listen, I want to speak to God. Nah, you can't, you know, you got to speak to his associate. God's out to lunch right now. He's in a meeting. Okay, he can't take your call. But however, I do have this person you can speak to. It's the same thing when you go to church or when you go to confession. I want to confess my sins, right? But I've got to go to this guy in a booth to confess my sins. Like, but I want to confess them to God. No. What you do, you go into that booth. There's a guy in there, and you talk to him. So why can't I talk to God? You want to talk to God? Oh, pastor knows. Let's go to pastor. Pastor knows exactly what God wants. You know, pastor's God's secretary. So, you know, let's talk to pastor. Why don't you speak to God? Why is it that God seems to always send some other people, apparently, that are chosen by him, for you to speak to, for you to get his word? Why doesn't God want to speak to you directly? And so all we get, right, is books. Again, books from people claiming that this is from the head honcho, claiming that this is from the CEO. Now listen, you can claim that this book is from the CEO. However, when I look into this book, I don't see his signature. You know, he never signed it saying, yeah, you know, this was my word and this is exactly what I wrote. These are my words verbatim. I mean, people, we need to kind of look at this in a real world situation, a real world scenario. If you've got a discrepancy and you ask people, you ask the company out that you want to speak to, you know, the CEO, and every time you want to speak to the CEO, somebody comes downstairs to the lobby and says, hey, he's not here right now, but speak to me. I'll tell you what he says. At some point, you got to be like, no, I actually want to see the head guy. I don't want to speak to you. I want to see the head guy to understand where his head's at and tell him exactly what I want him to know. Why every time is there somebody in between you and the source? Why? Are you not that important? This is what I'm wondering. Are you not that important that the source wants to speak to you, or you can't speak to the source? And is the source that unintelligent? I'm trying to be politically correct because I could be like disrespectful, but this source apparently is all wise. Yeah, this God is apparently all wise, but he's not wise enough to know apparently that human beings won't necessarily believe another human being. You know? They won't necessarily believe them. If these are the words from the source and you want me to believe these are your words, then show yourself, bro. Like, don't send another flawed human being that we know human beings can be flawed and ask me to believe that human being over you. Because the only person that can verify your words are you. Which is why for me, I don't use those intermediaries. If I need to contact the source, I'll contact the source myself. That's exactly what I'll do. Now, for instance, if I was to say to you that this conversation right now is not my words, it's the words of the source. I spoke to the source, yeah? And the source said, these are his words, so believe me. Would you believe me? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't believe me. But I'm telling you, these are the words of the source, so believe me. You're not going to. And so the only way you're going to believe me is if you speak to the source yourself. So I'm wondering when human beings are going to get smarter and stop allowing themselves to be manipulated by other human beings, because who wrote these books? These books were written by men and women, right? They were edited by men and women. Last time I checked, God didn't have a pen and paper. Didn't do it, didn't have a printing press. However, actually in the Islamic narrative, God does have a pen, as a matter of fact. God has a pen, a talking pen, as a matter of fact. But that pen only was to write the story of human beings from beginning to end, I believe. It wasn't writing the Quran. That pen didn't write the Quran. But what about Jehovah? What about Yahweh? What about Jesus? Did Jesus ever write anything down? If you want to use Jesus, did God write anything down? No. So you've actually got to take on faith that these words are the words of God. Now, you can believe those. You can believe those books. You have every right to believe those books. And you can believe that these are the words of God. However, if you look at it logically and objectively, what you are now doing is using circular logic and circular reasoning. Because you're saying the book says it's from the source. I believe the book, therefore this book is from the source. That's your reasoning. Now, if I said the book says, the comic book says Batman lives in Gotham City, I believe the comic, therefore Batman lives in Gotham City, you would think I'm crazy. You'd be like, listen, bro, you need to at least show me Gotham City if you're going to tell people that Gotham City exists. And I was like, no. The book says Batman lives in Gotham City. That's where Batman lives there. Batman exists. Why? Because I believe in the book. I believe the comic book. I believe the comic book. Batman lives in Gotham City. That is exactly what I believe. And if you don't believe me, then you're wrong. Same reasoning with these books. You believe everything in this book is true. Therefore, it's true because the book says so. It's called circular reasoning. It's called circular logic. You are going to need more, okay, than just what the book says. Because I'll tell you something. If you walked into a court of law with that kind of reasoning, let's take Judge Judy, for instance. If you walked into Judge Judy's courtroom with a piece of paper that said, Your Honor, so-and-so hit my car on this date and there's 3,000 in damages and I want the 3,000. Judge is going to read that and be like, all right, fine, I've read your claim. Now, what evidence do you have that this actually happened? And you look at the judge and you say, it's on the paper. And the judge says, okay, I've read the paper, I've read your claim. What evidence, what proof do you have that this actually happened? And you say, it's on the paper. The judge is going to ask you one more time. I've read the paper and I understand the claim that you have. However, what evidence, what proof do you have? Do you have pictures? Do you have witnesses? Do you have anything? And you say, no, all I have is the paper. You're going to get thrown out of court. You're going to get thrown out of court because if all you have is the piece of paper and the words on the page, without any evidence to back up what you say, you don't have a case. But in the case of these books, that's exactly what they have. They have words on a paper, words in the book, people believe in it, and people saying, yeah, because they believe it, so it must be true. You ask them to go outside of that book to prove what you want to go outside of the book to prove a man walked on water. You can't do it. You got to go outside of the book to prove that a man flew off into the sky on a white-winged horse in Islam. You can't prove it. You want to go outside the book to prove that a man parted the Red Sea with a staff and led his people through the Red Sea. You can't prove it. But because the book says so, it must be true. And that is the reason you're dealing with. And this is why I said to you, if you keep using these intermediaries, right? If you keep using these in-between people to tell you about this source, you're going to look quite silly. Go to the source yourself. That's what you need to do, people. Stop believing stories, stop believing what people say, because you can't verify these things and what people say. Every time you want to speak to the head honcho in charge, you've got to go through it in, oh, it's Moses. Oh, it's Abraham. Oh, it's Jesus. Oh, it's Muhammad. Not only Muhammad, it's Angel Gabriel via Muhammad, then to Muhammad. It's like every time, intermediary, people in the middle. In Islam, they say, oh, God has no partners. He has no associates. Really? So Muhammad is not an associate. Muhammad is not a partner. To get to God's word, you didn't need Muhammad. Bro, that's a partner. I don't know. I don't care how you want to describe it. That's a partner. If you need to speak to me, right, and I send someone else to speak to you, that's my associate. That's my partner. You can word it how you want. You can try and dance around it all you want. That's my partner. But you said God has no partners. God has no associates. Well, that's a bit of a contradiction. And so I'm telling people right now to get to the source. You contact the source yourself and get your own answers. You need to meditate, do whatever you need to do, light some candles, burn some incense, do exactly what you need to do to get to that source, right? And stop believing in these associates, in these partners, in these secretaries, in these representatives. Because every God's got a representative. But when you look outside of the Abrahamic text now, you get into systems that you don't necessarily need an intermediary. You don't need a representative. You can get to the source yourself. Me? I speak to the source all the time. And people will say, oh, you don't do that because that's Satan, or that's, it's the jinn, or it's devil worship, or, people always want to take you away from the source, right? They always want to take you away with some fearful talk. Now, I say, you know what, you can keep your fear for me, right? I've had enough of people trying to, scare me into not doing what I do. People always try and feed you their fear. I don't need your fear. I don't have it. The shaitan, the jinn, the devil, the this. I haven't got your fear. I don't have those fears. And then they try to superimpose their fear on you. I'm like, that's not my reality. Why are you going to talk about the devil and I don't know the devil? I don't know him. Never met him in my life. I don't know the jinn. I don't know the shaitan. I don't know the iblis. I don't know the Lucifer. I don't know these people. But people try to superimpose that on you when you start to talk to them about your spiritual system. It's like, I don't know these people. You know them better than I do, it seems. You know these folks better. I don't know if you sat down to dinner with these people and you had like a conversation. I've never had a conversation with the devil. Don't know who he is. Never met him in my life. However, when I speak to people about my spiritual system, and when I speak to the source, they say, oh, you know what that is? That's the devil. That's the jinn. That's the shaitan. I don't know these people. I don't know these people. These aren't my folks. Never met them in my life. You know them though. So you speak to them if you know them, but I don't know those people. So people, I'm going to close now, and I'm going to leave with saying, listen, contact the source however you feel to contact the source, okay? The source is unlimited, okay? It's not limited to Christianity. It's not limited to Islam. It's not limited to Hinduism. It's not limited to Buddhism. It's not limited to anything. It's limitless. So contact the source without any intermediaries and do you. Peace, family. Peace.